Mantle.
Deputy Speaker, I seek leave to speak again without closing the debate.
Is leave granted? The member for Fremantle may proceed.
Thanks, Deputy Speaker, I welcome the report, which I had significant involvement in as the chair of the Joint Standing Committee on Treaties. It has recommended ratification, and on the Australian side that has occurred, and the enabling legislation has been through the House of Representatives as well. We do still wait for some of the process that needs to occur in the UK to take place before it comes into force, and we hope that that can happen as soon as possible. I will follow some of the remarks just made by acknowledging the work that the former minister did under the previous government. That was very significant, and particularly in the COVID circumstances. I believe that it was actually concluded by a virtual signing, which obviously was one of the kinds of virtual events that we all had to make the best of through a difficult period. But I acknowledge the work that the former minister did in concluding what was a very significant agreement. The first trade agreement the UK has signed post-Brexit that was completely new. As the previous speaker said, the member for Wannon, the most ambitious trade agreement we've concluded with any country other than New Zealand. There's just no question that trade is critical to Australia, and that trade with the UK is critical to Australia. They're our fifth largest two-way trading partner. They're our third largest services trading partner. The UK is both the second largest source of foreign direct investment and the second largest recipient of outgoing Australian foreign investment. And that gives you some sense of the significance of the relationship and the value that's achieved when we improve the terms on which we trade with the UK, both in goods and in services. As the member for Wannon said, this agreement takes the tariff-free access for Australian goods exports from 89% to 99% when it comes into force. That's a pretty significant jump, particularly for the goods that constitute the highest value exports from Australia to the UK, which are gold, alcoholic beverages, lead, pearls and gems, and so on. Obviously, from our point of view, the United Kingdom is very significant also as the fourth largest source of inbound tourism, and we'd like to see that keep growing, especially in the post-COVID world. And there are aspects of the agreement that make it easier for citizens of Australia and citizens of the UK to travel to and spend time in and work in our respective countries, and I think that that's something that's very worthy. There are some other things about the agreement that are pretty significant. It has a world-first chapter dedicated to promoting innovation. So that's the first time such a chapter has been included in any agreement. That's certainly worth noting. And an Australian-first chapter that looks to enhance women's access to the full benefits of trade and investment. And that's, I think, notable in the week that we mark International Women's Day. It's true that in lots of areas of social and economic life that women haven't had the opportunity to participate fully and equally in trade and investment. And so the chapter in this agreement between ourselves and the UK is an Australian first. Those are features of what get described as WTO plus agreements, in the sense that they go above and beyond the sort of the content that is traditionally covered through the WTO. There are also provisions in this agreement that seek to advance Indigenous interests in a number of ways and to open new opportunities for First Nations exporters, and that's welcome. One of them that I can point to goes to the artists' resale royalty arrangements. We have a scheme like that in Australia that the previous Labor government put in place, and the UK has a scheme as well, and it's envisaged under this agreement that those arrangements will become reciprocal, and that's pretty significant. I mean, for people who may not have turned their mind to sort of resale royalty arrangements, you can understand that for an artist who sells their work initially, perhaps also when developing. They might sell their early works for a relatively low price. As their artistic talent comes to be established and recognised, the value of their work increases, and then the work is sold and on-sold. But the benefit of the increase in value, a significant part of which is due to the reputation and the artistic expertise of the person who created that work, is never seen by them. And so resale royalties essentially mean that as that asset kind of increases in value and moves from owner to owner, that some of that increase in value is returned to its creator, and I think that that's appropriate. So, you can imagine that First Nations art being sold into the United Kingdom is not insignificant and probably will grow. And if we can end up with those reciprocal arrangements, it would mean that all artists, but certainly First Nations artists, would benefit from that. So that's something that we really welcome. It's never the case that you get everything you want in a trade agreement. The member for Wannon was right to say that we have excellent negotiators, and that the public servants who work in the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade are excellent people, and they do great work behind the scenes when parliamentarians and ministers get to be in the flash of the camera light signing agreements. Of course, that occurs off the back of years and years of work of dozens and dozens of people, and it's absolutely right that we recognise that. There are some things that we won't get in agreements just because that's the nature of negotiation. So there are some areas that through the course of the inquiry we were alerted to where, while the improvements were made, there are further improvements that we'd like to see. And they do tend to go to agricultural products. I mean, the UK, unlike Australia, we're essentially a free and open import destination. People can bring goods into Australia tariff-free in almost any category, whether or not they have a trade agreement with us, frankly. The UK, like a number of countries, including the US, that sometimes style themselves as champions of the free market and champions of liberalisation, actually do continue to practice some self-interested protective measures. And there continue to be some areas in agriculture around beef, sheep, meat, dairy and sugar that could be further liberalised, going further from what has been achieved under this agreement. There was some significant improvement in terms of the access for wine, and that's significant because the UK has become our number one destination, export destination for Australian wine. Sadly, because China is not allowing the export or the import of Australian wine. So our exports of wine to China were at the top of the list, around $1 billion annually. That has fallen away very, very, very significantly, and that means that the UK at about $500 million a year is our top wine export. Through this agreement, the tariff of £2.20 that used to apply per bottle on wine of less than 15% alcohol by volume has disappeared, and the tariff of £3 per bottle on wine or alcoholic beverages over 15% has also disappeared. And Australian Grape and Wine told the committee that their best guess is that will deliver a $43 million benefit to our industry here, and that's really important, particularly when you see all of these arrangements in their context. I mean, we want as many opportunities for our exporters, not least because when things go wrong, as occurred, and we find ourselves on the end of unjustified and I would say, from China's point of view, self-harming geo-economic coercion. You know, it's China and their consumers that are missing out on the wonderful joys of Australian wine. But when we find things like that happening almost overnight, it's really important that Australian producers and exporters, manufacturers, have other options. And so this change will no doubt expand the export of alcoholic beverages, particularly wine, into the UK. For all of the reasons I've identified and that the member for Wannon has mentioned, you know, this is a significant agreement, a really significant agreement, and I'm glad that it has been achieved and we've done our part. We look forward to the UK doing their bit, and it'll come into force.